I grew up on a farm in a little community called Robertson, Georgia, halfway between Augusta and Atlanta. And I always liked the outdoors.
At just a year old, Jim Andrews was already taking imaginative approaches to life on the little farm between Crawfordville and Union Point, where his best friends were a horse he called Quaker and a cow he named Tite.
A very small 400-acre farm that my grandfather had, and he raised cattle and had row crops from time to time. So it was a very small, humble beginning.
His mom was one of the first women to go to the University of Georgia, but his dad didn't have that opportunity, a shortcoming he didn't want to see visited on his son.
It was a struggle for my grandparents. They were not wealthy by any means, and everything they had was in the land.
I went to the University of Georgia, and I did my graduate work and PhD work at the Hormel Institute in Austin, Minnesota, and I had no plan for my life.
Fusing his farm boy background with a PhD in biochemistry, Jim Andrews was available and uniquely prepared when opportunity arose at the Skidaway Institute of Oceanography. Herb Wyndham was their first scientist. Jim was the second.
We worked on fish nutrition and methods of growing fish in captivity called aquaculture.
He got very much involved in doing analyses of water quality, because you've got to maintain good water quality to maintain healthy fish.
He was very familiar with all that laboratory environment, and then I think he was closely watching how the regulatory world was changing in the 70s toward, environmental legislation.
So I think he got into water quality, and he set up a little private lab to start doing water quality analyses.
His interest in water quality would have broad repercussions that went well beyond fish. The nation was waking up to its polluted waterways and toxic environment. Having a business that tested water would prove to be an inspired idea.
There was a need for a laboratory here in town to do some environmental work for the EPA. A couple of engineering firms wanted that work done, and we got started on a part-time basis.
And I think he got into the business of it, and that's what I think is what it turns him on.
And so Savannah Labs was born, initially in the little building you see at the front here, but it grew to add the middle building and then the bigger building at the rear. And not just that.
We ended up having 6 laboratories in the Southeast, and we were the largest private laboratory company in the country. And we did work from everywhere. Anywhere FedEx went, we got samples coming into there.
He just saw an opportunity, really. He had the scientific background and saw the legislation coming, although slowly, and really set himself up to ease into the business as the legislation evolved.
Dr. Andrews proved not to be just an astute businessman, but the kind of man that inspired productivity and loyalty from his highly skilled team.
He traveled to all our locations, and he took the time to meet everybody, and he knew everybody's name. And that meant a lot to people.
Had over 500 employees and 6 different branches throughout Florida and Alabama and Louisiana. And we essentially got environmental samples for hazardous waste, for drinking water, for sewage, and tested those that were sent to us. And we had at one time over 500 employees. People didn't really know much about it because most of the business was not local. It was engineers sending it in from all over the world.
His success drew the attention of the multinationals, and in 2001, he sold the company, now known as Test America.
His number one objective was to make sure that there were no layoffs. And really, amazingly, the buyer, the largest water utility company in the UK, honored all his wishes.
And this area here is going to be the children's garden right across.
Oh, okay. The best thing to ever happen to the Coastal Gardens was when Jim Andrews retired.
I think the work that's been done here at the Botanical Gardens is something that we felt that we could give back to the community And we've involved a lot of nice people and a lot of hardworking people who have given that time and money. I think this is a sustainable place, and it will be here for a long time, and will be known eventually as one of the top gardens in the country.
When my father retired, I quite frankly was a little worried because he had been that 60, 70-hour work a day kind of guy, and he didn't really have many hobbies. Well, I don't know that he had any hobbies at all.
You know, everybody at some point in their age, they find something they're really passionate about.
We've taken it from the bamboo farms where they grew bamboo that nobody really wanted at the time, to where we have an absolutely beautiful garden.
There was a lot of concern by me and my mother and his friends that he needed to find something that he could really wrap his arms around, because when he gets involved in something, it's all in.
That something was the Coastal Gardens.
When this building was built, and then we added this garden, it changed our lives.
The building is the Andrews Visitor and Education Center, and though imported, it's just the tip of the iceberg of what the Andrews have meant to what used to be known as the Bamboo Farm.
We actually built some of the gardens, that's correct. Roll up sleeves if you go out there and you see the camellia garden. Jim and I planted a lot of the camellias.
Tom Davis made his fortune in the plumbing supply business. He also planted the Rose Garden alongside Dr. Andrews. In the middle of the project, they realized they needed to come up with a float valve to control water flow.
Jim said to me, well, I know what we can do with the float valve. I'll just go ahead and get a ball cock valve that you normally would use in a toilet. And I said, Jim, it'll never work. It won't do the job and it won't last. And that was about 10 years ago and it's still working. So that's Jim.
He's a genius, because it's not only that he has the vision of what he wants to accomplish, say with a building or with a garden or something like that, but then he's able to go out there and I'll actually, many times I've actually seen him with a shovel digging the ditch, with the tape measure measuring something.
And then it'll connect up to the maze.
Sometimes this is like a guilt trip on me. I'm leaving and I'm locking the gate, and Dr. Andrews is still out there with a shovel or a tape measure and working. And not only will he work, he'll bring the grandkids out here.
Getting kids off the Nintendo and out into the garden is one of the goals of the center, but it's also become a gathering place for a community that is beginning to realize what a jewel it has become.
I think we've reached that state now where it's the best, in my opinion, it's the best new botanical garden in the country.
We would like to take this opportunity to specifically thank Dr. and Mrs. Andrews.
Dr. Andrews has also lent critical support to Second Harvest Food Bank through the Kids Cafe program, which has seen its importance to the community soar in the wake of Hurricane Matthew.
The money they use for gas or to get to a relative's house or something is the money that they may have spent on food. Well, the food they had is gone now. Being able to make sure when those children walked back into those kids' cafes, they had a hot meal and we could alleviate that concern from those parents was huge for us, and I'm sure just unbelievable for the people that support us, like Dr. and Mrs. Andrews.
Food and education come together at Kids Cafe, as they come together in the life of Dr. Jim Andrews, who has enriched the community by his enterprise, his intelligence, and his generosity in a lifetime of exemplary achievement.
The most tenacious, brightest guy I've ever worked around.
He's just the guy that's, the wheel's always turning.
He's my best friend. I rely on him for advice.
Because of his generosity, that's led then to others being generous too.
There was no golf, there was no fishing. He only had so much time, and he dedicated it to where he was most passionate about.
The thing he's most passionate about? Well, all I can say is that the note on this picture, written in his own hand, said simply, "The love of my life." Dr. Jim Andrews is a laureate in the Junior Achievement Savannah Business Hall of Fame.